Why do movies based on books simply not look like the book? Look at this scene, not on the screen, in your head. The first time you read your favorite book, this is where it happened, in that quiet, hidden space that no one else sees. Do you remember? That chapter you needed to reread, that phrase that seemed written just for you, that character that became almost a secret. Now imagine adapting that same book into a movie. The poster, the hype, the trailer, the anticipation. You sat down in the armchair, the light went out, and something was wrong. It was the same story, the same names, sometimes even the same dialogues. But what about the feeling? Completely different. And then came the phrase that every reader has either said or heard. The book is better. Today I want to do what almost no studio has the courage to do. Take that phrase seriously, not as a fan complaint, but as an awkward question. Why is it that movies based on books simply can't seem to resemble those readings? It's not just because they cut scenes. It's not just because they change the ending. It's not just because the actor doesn't match the character. There's something deeper to it. Something that begins long before the first clapperboard. It begins the moment you turn the first page. The cliché of, the book is better. When a movie disappoints, explanations come quickly. But the book is very complex. They only had 2 hours to tell everything. The studio interfered and ruined the director's vision. They simplified it to make money. There's some truth to all of this. Screen time, budget, commercial interests, of course they influence it. But if that were the only problem, then adaptations super loyal. They should always work. And you know that's not how it is. There are films that respect every event in the book, repeats dialogues word for word, and yet it feels empty inside, almost dead. Meanwhile, there are adaptations that change everything. They cut characters, change the ending, rearrange the story, and somehow you feel, wow, this perfectly captured the spirit of the book. Then the question changes form. Perhaps the problem isn't just that, how much the film is faithful, but to what he is trying to be faithful. And to understand this, we need to look at a certain type of cinema that no director can control, the cinema that happens inside you when you read. The invisible cinema in your mind. When you read a book, you're not just a spectator. You are a co-author. You are the co-director. The page doesn't deliver everything ready-made. She suggests it. He insinuates. Leave empty spaces. And that's where your mind comes in. She fills in the sound of the character's voice. Invent the rhythm of his step. Decide how much light comes in through the window. Choose whether that street is your childhood street or a city you've never visited. Without realizing it, you are casting actors, designing costumes, choosing framing, composing soundtrack word for word. You're directing a movie that only you can see. Each reader creates their own version. That's why when the adaptation premieres in theaters, the film isn't just competing with the book. He is competing with millions of invisible films that already exist within each reader. Films that were created over days, weeks, months, during sleepless nights, on crowded buses, during lunch breaks. How does a 2-hour production, with decisions made by half a dozen people, will he be able to overcome this crowd of silent directors? Perhaps the obvious answer is, she's not going. Interiority. Books film from the inside out. Books have a type of camera, which cinema almost never manages to use. It's not a camera that films faces. It's a camera that films thought. A novel can span entire pages, trapped inside a character's head. Memories that invade without asking permission, exaggerated paranoia, shameful fantasies, conversations that never happened. But he repeats them 1,000 times in his mind. In film, we call this interiority. And cinema, by its very nature, is terrible at portraying interiority. He can try. Use voiceover narration, zoom in on the face, put on some sad music, darken the scene. But none of that compares to sitting inside someone's mind and hear everything she wouldn't have the courage to say. When you read, you don't just follow the character, you mixes with him. His anxiety makes his heart race. His shame flushes his face. His anger causes his hand to clench on the book. When will this story be adapted into a movie? She needs to commit an unavoidable betrayal, turning thoughts into actions, transforming sensations into images, transforming silence into dialogue. What in the book was an entire paragraph of doubt, in the film it becomes an okay, said with a sad face. And no matter how talented the cast is, however sensitive the director may be, something always slips through the cracks. Because words and images, they don't enter our bodies through the same route. Time. The book makes you sink. The film drags you in. There is another chasm between the book and the film, which we rarely take into account. The time. A book gives you a silent power, controlling the rhythm. You can reread the same page 5 times, stop at the middle of a heavy chapter and breathe. To be stuck in one scene for 3 days because he's afraid of what comes next. The book is waiting for you, not the cinema. In the cinema, the film continues, whether you're ready or not. The narrative needs to fit into 2 hours. Moments of grief, shock, and discovery, they need to fit within the schedule of the person who bought the ticket at the 8:30 session. So, those scenes that are in the book, they were built drop by drop for dozens of pages. In the film, they saw a quick cut, a 30-second montage, a song that goes up and down, and you leave the session with this strange feeling, wow. But in the book, that destroyed me. It's not that the film lacks emotion. That's because of cinema time. Needs to organize the emotion to fit into a 2-hour box. The book, no. He might leave you lost in there, as much as is necessary. The texture of words versus the surface of images. There are books that just stick with you, not so much because of what happens, but by way how someone tells it. The rhythm of the sentences, strange metaphors, the narrator's voice who sometimes talks to you as if you were a friend, other times as if confessing to a crime. There's no direct equivalent for cinema in that. He has core light framing movement seam. All of this creates style, it creates atmosphere, but it doesn't replace the feeling. To be crossed by a sentence. A single line in a novel can stop you in your tracks for minutes. He had the look of someone who had been run over by a future he never chose. How do you adapt that? Have a character say that line? Does it play with voiceover narration? Does it write on the screen? You can, at least, but magic changes shape. Magic? In the book, it's almost like direct contact. The author's mind touching yours without intermediaries. In the film, that same phrase needs to become script, filming, editing, product. It passes through dozens of hands, and along the way, things inevitably change. The result can be beautiful, exciting, powerful, but it will never be the same scar. What that sentence left you with when you read it for the first time. Good adaptations versus glamorous failures. Let's bring this down to earth for a moment. Because in theory, everything is beautiful. But what about in practice? When many people think about a good adaptation, one of the first names that comes to mind is The Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson. Movies cut out a lot of stuff. They change the order of events, they streamline the characters. And yet many readers feel that the spirit of Middle-earth is there. It's not because every detail of the plot has been preserved. It's because of the feeling of a journey, of weight, of melancholic beauty. It was translated into image, sound, and silence. Another curious case is Fight Club. There are important changes compared to the book, but the tone, the anger, the feeling of inner collapse. All of this was displayed on the screen in its entirety. On the other hand, we have adaptations that try to be extremely faithful to the plot, to the events, and they fail precisely where it matters. That's a lot. Think about Aragon in certain versions of Percy Jackson or in At Torre Negra. The names are there, the places are there, some key facts are there, but the world seems shallow. The characters, empty. It feels like they just took the skeleton of the book and they took out the heart. Why? Because often the obsession is to be faithful to events and not to effect. It's like copying the notes of a song without worrying if she still makes someone cry. The adaptations that remain in our memory, they are not the ones that say, I did everything exactly like in the book. These are the ones who have the courage to say, I understood what this book did to people. Let me try to do something similar, using the language of cinema. Book, private mirror, film, public mirror. There's another reason for a film to never be able to be the same as the book, and it has nothing to do with the script, not even with a photograph, not even with art direction. It has to do with shame, with intimacy. Reading is a profoundly private act. It's just you and the text. No one sees your face when you identify with the villain. Nobody notices when you cry over a character that doesn't even exist. Nobody knows which scene you reread 3 times, because it hurt too much to move on. In this space, the book becomes a confessional. You pour it into him. Fears, wishes, costumes, traumas, and the book absorbs everything in silence. A film doesn't have that luxury. A movie is noisy. Even if you watch it alone, you know that millions of people, they are seeing the same images as you. The book whispers, this is just between the two of us. The film screams, this is for everyone. It's like the difference between looking at yourself in a small mirror in the bathroom and suddenly see yourself on a big screen in a shopping mall. You even recognize yourself, but the feeling changes. The book reflects you in secret. The film reflects you in public, and perhaps that's why. That however perfect the cast may be, the photograph, the trail, there should always be a part of you that thinks, okay, but it's not good. That's what I experienced while reading. What a good adaptation should dare to be. Perhaps then the initial question, why don't movies based on books resemble the book? It is impossible to answer, just the way we'd like it. Perhaps no film will ever seem like it. With your reading, because no film can occupy the place of your imagination. What if, instead of demanding that, what if we changed the question? Instead of, why isn't the movie the same as the book? To ask, what a film should have the courage to be, knowing that you'll never succeed. The answer is uncomfortable, but liberating. A good adaptation requires acceptance their own failure. She needs to admit, I will never be the book you read. I will never be that moment in your life. I will never be the movie you secretly directed inside your head. And that's precisely why she needs to stop trying to imitate the book and begin to dream your own dream. Being faithful to a book doesn't mean repeating everything. It's about understanding, where did he hurt you? What part of you did he reveal? What an uncomfortable truth he forced you to face. And from there, use image, sound, silence, and time to reopen that same wound in a new way. Books and movies are not enemies. They are 2 different languages, invoking the same ghosts. One of them whispers their names onto the paper. The other one projects its shadows onto a wall. Neither of the two will manage to look exactly like the other one. And maybe, if they did that, the magic would end. So, the next time you leave the movie theater, saying the book is better, maybe you're talking about something much bigger than the movie. Perhaps you are saying of the reader you were back then, from the silence of those nights, from the invisible film that only you saw, and no studio, no matter how large the budget, you'll be able to remake it. Now I want to hear from you. Which adaptation hurt you the most? Not because the movie was awful, but because however good it might be, he could never be or another version of that story. Tell me in the comments, and if you want to continue exploring the shadows behind the stories that we think we know, from fairy tales and fables to the great classics of cinema, sign up for DUALIS here. People, you keep decoding films, literature, invisible stories that live inside you. Until next time.